Pacers preseason, it's done. It's over. And boy, did we learn a lot. Benedict Mathurin looks awesome. Andrew Nembhard looks okay. Jalen Smith did good and bad stuff. Myles Turner's role is interesting and a lot more. We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI. Man, I'm not used to that new intro yet. And today, we're diving into Pacers preseason play. Last time we could talk about the preseason because the regular season for the NBA starts tonight. The Pacers regular season starts tomorrow. But we learned a lot in preseason, and this Pacers team has a lot of interesting topics heading into their opener against the Wizards tomorrow. We got to wrap up preseason and everything we learned about this team ahead of the season. Joining me to do that, frequent guest here on Locked On Pacers from Sports Ethos, it's Rhett Bauer, the man with a plan at all times. Rhett, how much did you learn during the preseason?
I learned a lot, I feel like, but does any of it matter is the real question. Like that's always what it is, right?
The burning questions of preseason. So like, here's where I fall on that. It's like you can kind of sniff concepts. Like Edmund Sumner had a good preseason in his second year, and it was like, oh, maybe this guy's going to be good one day. Vic had a really good preseason before he took off. Like you can generally tell, maybe not exactly how good or bad a concept, a player is, but you can get a feel for like, oh, maybe this will be a thing. So, yes, I agree with you that it's preseason, the third quarter where guys are subbing in that I'm like, oh, yeah, he's in the NBA, but there still is a competitive portion of games and we learned a lot from it. And we both made lists of stuff we learned this preseason, but we're going to throw them out for the first segment here because something everybody who watched the Pacers learned is, holy crap, Bennedict Mathurin is good. He was obviously the standout of the team and worth every second of discussion you can give him for his preseason play. Nearly 20 points a game. I think he finished first amongst rookies who played more than one game. Jabari Smith scored over 20 but only played once. So the leading scorer amongst rookies, fearless rim attacker, game-changing in preseason, but game-changing offensive talent. And just like against the Knicks the second time, he had half of the Pacers free throw attempts himself. Like the way he's able to score efficiently, get the shots he wants. He was just such a standout performer that one, I think we learned a lot about what he could be good at in the NBA. And two, he might be one of the better rookies in the entire league this year.
Yeah, he was incredible. And the free throw rate was just absurd. But not only that, but like you can get there, sure, but hitting 85% of them too. I mean, watching him just be relentless at the rim and have a 48% field goal percentage despite shooting 15% from three. Like the future is very, very bright for Matherin, even if his shot doesn't develop, which 15% is not going to happen. Like he'll easily be at 30, I would think, at the very least. So there's a lot to look forward to with him. And it was just nice to see the Pacers like absolutely nail a pick, even if it was just 4 preseason games.
Yeah, you got to go back to Chris Dunn, who was killer in Summer League and preseason.
Oh, man, I love Chris Dunn.
Did not pan out. Yeah, I liked Chris Dunn, too, at that time. And I'm not comparing them, but I will say, everybody, there are some expectation level-headedness that has to happen. But that's boring to talk about. I want to talk about lowering your expectations. The other thing about the 3-point percentages, pick your 4-game sample, right? Summer League 4-game sample, he shot very well from 3. So, where will that settle in? I don't know. That's probably the biggest question about his offensive game heading into the season, because even in Summer League, he toggled off ball and on ball pretty well, but still was doing the stuff where he was getting to the rim on balance, drawing foul, stuff like that. So clearly has something in his bag that allows him to get to the rim, especially when he starts off ball, right? That was something that he talked about after the second Knicks game. This was something that really impressed me. I think I talked about this on the show already. Beyond just doing really well in that game, right? 27 points, a bajillion free throws. He said that he recognized something in the film about the way the Knicks were guarding him. And so he changed the way he approached his catches off the ball and his drives, and he adjusted, and it made him play better. And that's such like a duh thing. Like in sports, you should adjust and try to do well. But for a rookie who's never played an NBA game to see that on the film, know what he needs the adjustment to be, and then execute it 5 days later in a killer comeback win. I mean, that is just supremely impressive to me and suggests he has good feel for the game. He has good film analysis that can help him improve throughout the season because we saw with Duarte last year, he will hit a rookie wall. Like every rookie ever has done it. But if he has ways he can get to his counters, if he understands what he needs to do, he can at least survive it and have a capable rookie season still.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just that he was seeing those adjustments and making those adjustments because, the coaches can help him point out, be like, hey, this is what you need to do. But it was the fact that he was making those adjustments effectively against actual NBA talent because it was against the Knicks, who the Knicks should be like they're pushing for play in. They expect to be good. They were good 2 years ago and they just brought in Jalen Brunson. But like, to be able to do that and immediately have an impact against NBA players, not just summer league, not just fourth stringers who immediately got cut a couple of days ago, that is incredibly encouraging.
That game was huge, and he was good in every game, and he got better every game. And until the Rockets game, and even wasn't bad in that game, but the improvement was impressive over the preseason. Something else Rick Carlisle said that stood out to me about him. I think I can't remember what game it was after, but he was talking about how some players, their game is just more naturally suited to the NBA than college. And you hear that, and sometimes that's just like feels like a buzz phrase used when a player like really pops compared to their draft position or something. But in this case, where he's playing on, don't get me wrong, Arizona was good, but a team that had guys in the post a lot and didn't have the best shooters. Coloco's in the NBA now, but he's he was around the basket a lot at Arizona. He didn't look like this level of rim attacker. Like he looked athletic and could handle it and do all this stuff, but to this extent already, I think does show that some element of added spacing, will really help him. And the NBA game could suit him better than the college game. And I think a lot of people predicted something like that heading into the draft, but to see it so soon was really impressive. And that's going to stick with me for a while as he continues to progress in that way, because that's something rookies kind of struggle with: is one, getting past our defender, creating separation, and two, they get to the rim and they go, oh my God, this 7-foot tall guy's running at me. I better flip up a floater or something and not just go right through him and draw the foul. He's already past that stage. Yeah, he'll have to get counters for the better defenders, but his game might just be better suited for the NBA.
Yeah, and if you take out his 2 for 13 from 3 in preseason, he shot 58% from 2. That is just absurd. And I think one of the things that I wish I probably should go back and look is he was getting to the rim no matter what big was out there. Right? Because like you can say, oh, it's NBA spacing because he was playing with Jalen Smith at the 4 and Myles Turner at the 5, but he might have been playing with Goga. He was playing with Ijax. He was playing with James Johnson. Like it was just dudes out there. It did not matter who was out there. It just seemed like he was getting to the rim against NBA players. And that is definitely something like I want to see him go against like a Drew Holiday. Like obviously Drew is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, Marcus Smart, obviously. But once we can see him do it against an actual elite defender in an actual NBA game, I think that's going to be just a really, really telling matchup that I'm very excited to see here in a couple of days.
The first 2 games of preseason, the road games, they were kind of hockey subbing, or it was like, here's the starters, here's the bench all together. And then the last 2 games, unfortunately, we didn't get to see him with Halliburton, but in the last 2 games, Carlisle kind of blended the units more. And he was still good no matter who he was with, which was, of course, very impressive. That's actually something about Andrew Nembhard that impressed me, too, is whatever big Nembhard was with, immediate pick and roll synergy to some extent. But the Matherin, even at the 3, right? I forget which game it was. I believe it was the very last game they played. He was at the 3 next to Langston Galloway and TJ McConnell for a couple lineups or whatever. I know that Galloway was one of the guards. Like that's positional versatility too. Like to be able to do it in multiple ways. I mean, I feel like I'm saying the same stuff a lot, but just like no matter what situation he was put in, he looked really good. Like one of the Pacers' best offensive threats. He's never played in an actual NBA game. I mean, we could talk about preseason all you want, but like that is the takeaways. Like there's a chance that maybe he's not the best player in this draft class. In fact, I would wager he's not. The odds say he's not, but the chance he's the best rookie are pretty impressively high, I would say, after a start like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we keep giving it's just preseason caveat, but there's just way too many positive takeaways in a lot of different circumstances that make it just translatable seems like far-fetched because he's probably not going to score 20 points per game in 24 minutes a game. But just so many good things that I have a hard time seeing him not being good, and him being the best rookie this year is easily in the question.
Can we do the 2 minutes on everybody's favorite topic? Coming off the bench, should that continue?
Yeah.
How long should that continue? So, yeah, I think maximizing his minutes with Halliburton and Duarte should be the goal of this season. If that means he starts at some point, yes, that should happen. I do, though, understand the idea of him getting on-ball reps as often as possible, which is easier with the second unit. And this is something some guys talk about. I asked him about this after the Rockets game in the locker room, but like some guys can see what the defense is doing and sort of assess how they'll attack from the bench if they're with the second unit. And since he's good at recognizing that on film, he's also good at recognizing that from the bench. And he told me that after that Rockets game. Doug McDermott always talked about how that was really helpful for him. Some guys just, that works for them. They come off the bench and they can see what the defense is doing or how they're defending certain actions. And yes, I think ultimately at some point this season, Matherin will start. It's not a should or may. It's will. He will. But right now, I think, given what he looks like he's good at, given what the Pacers lineups look like they're going to be, and a small amount of, hey, let's showcase Buddy Hield, I think it makes sense for him to come off the bench right now, despite, and I get why everybody's saying he should start. He looked like their best player in the preseason. But I think right now, what they have makes the most sense.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. And when we talked about it in the preseason, it was like, who's going to be starting? I thought Duarte was more of a lock than Matherin, just because of the skill set with those starters, more of a 3-and-D type player. And then you get Matherin with the ball in his hands, but that also throws him into the fire of NBA talent. Like, I think that's one of the things that gets underrated is like, okay, yeah, you get him out there starting, but then Halliburton's got the ball in his hands, as he should. And obviously you want to see the kind of synergy that those two have together because that's the future of your franchise. But at the same time, early on, especially with, like you said, showcasing Buddy Hield, it's not a bad idea to have him just coming off the bench, have the ball in his hand a ton, get a bunch of shots up when he's the best player on the floor, most likely, and just kind of go from there. Let him get his feet and knees and entire body wet because he's just thrown all the way in the deep end with the second unit.
Hey guys, let's take one little break here so I can talk to you about LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You got to be 100% certain you've got access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. All you do, go on over to LinkedIn's Jobs page, and it's super easy to make a free post on there. You add your job in the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that your company is hiring. They have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering high-quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every day. I would say the biggest news out of the NBA was DeAndre Hunter getting $95 million bones from the Atlanta Hawks on a very last-second rookie scale extension. So I'll say Locked On Hawks should be your second listen today. Brad Rowland does a great job covering the Hawks team. Speaking of extensions, Rhett, we'll do this really quick. Surprise, surprise, no extensions for Goga Bitadze or Buddy Hield today. Bitadze extension made no sense. It's exceedingly rare that rookies making less than the MLE even get rookie extensions, and Nestor a little stunned me today taking that, but it made no sense for the Pacers or Goga to pursue a longer deal. They did not. It has passed that deadline. It's not midnight yet, so technically, I guess Buddy Hield could sign an extension with the Pacers in the next 2 hours, but he would not be eligible to be traded for the next 6 months, and I don't think the Pacers are going to do that to themselves, especially since he has 2 years left on his deal. Are you surprised at all that neither of those players are getting an extension, Rhett?
Am I surprised that your shadow campaign to get Goga the max this summer did not go answered? No, I am not surprised. He did, yeah. Goga Max Tadze. No, I'm not surprised at either of those. I think we talked about before we got on, Brogdon being extended at the offseason last year was kind of surprised because of this exactly. It's like, you cannot be traded. And I think the Pacers probably want Buddy Hield to have the option to be traded.
Even if they end up keeping him, because he has 2 years left on his deal, having
Yep.
the option is very valuable for the Pacers. No surprises on the no extensions. I think that was the most likely outcome, probably like 98% chance that was the case. But I'm again 2 hours, so technically maybe not. But I believe that is all but official at this stage to say. I went first, and we basically just riffed on Mather in the whole first segment. So give me a preseason takeaway, new thing in your brain about the Pacers that you got.
I think Aaron Nesmith would be my second takeaway. Even though we only saw him for a short amount of time before an injury, he looked good on both ends of the floor. And I think the thing that was the most surprising is his 4.5 free throw attempts a game, because he is not somebody I would have expected to put the ball on the floor. He did that at Vanderbilt a little bit. Like, he was the cog for their offense. He obviously was doing a lot of stuff, and he didn't play very many games there. But being able to get to draw fouls like that and shoot, I mean, he shot 29% from three, 33% from the field. So, like, the shooting numbers are not good, but defensively, he looked really, really good, I thought. And not only that, but him being out there as early as he was in the rotation was also surprising for me. So what did you see from Nesmith in that very short amount of time?
I pegged him as their 10th guy out of 10 in the rotation. Right? I thought he'd be in it, but not play a ton. He did play a ton in his only healthy game. I think he was like third on the team in minutes that night or something like that. I have it literally in front of my face and I can't read. 14 minutes that game, 16 points, 4 rebounds. But I think you nailed the one thing that like surprised me, right? Because even in summer league and sometimes with the Celtics, like, he's been athletic since Vanderbilt, and that sometimes translates to defense. And the way they defended against Charlotte, especially with that unit with him, McConnell, Matherin, and even Terry Taylor at times, like, that group is a lot of dudes who are, one, nosy on the ball, and two, similar enough size that they could switch. So they did a good job on the perimeter. So I was impressed with his defense, but I wasn't surprised. But you nailed the thing I was surprised by: putting the ball on the floor. It's like, all these projections in my head on the film about Aaron Nesmith, they're like, at this stage of after 3 years of kind of or 2 years, excuse me, of kind of play with the Celtics, it's like he's probably gonna be a 3-and-D wing. Like, to dribble, he set up a Matherin three that was waved off by a foul, and he was getting to the rim himself, and like you said, averaging 4.5 free throws per game. I didn't realize he had that many against the Knicks before getting hurt.
Yeah, at 89%. That's a free bucket.
Free throws at a high enough rate that makes me think his shooting from three last year was a bit of a low outlier. That, even if he's not a shooter, like what I always say with the wings, this because you listen, is like, if you can either defend or shoot, you can probably be in a rotation. If you can do both, you're really good. But if he can defend, and even if he's not a shooter, but he can dribble and like beat one guy with a 2-dribble move, oh yeah, he's going to be in the rotation all season. It was one game, which is why I haven't talked about him as much, because it was, he played fine against the Knicks, but he barely played and didn't have much of an impact because he hurt his foot. So I still have a little more I want to see, especially because his summer league was pretty poor. But that game was so impressive that, I mean, that has to be a big takeaway. Like, that could be a huge ticket for them to improvement. It's like, oh, we actually have a wing who can play some athletic defense.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it was just the one game, but he was in the rotation early. I think he was second sub.
I tracked him every game, but I delete my notes after I talked about him.
His second or third sub, I know that for sure. He was one of the first 8 or so off the bench. That's still against NBA players. Now, we know Charlotte wasn't trying super hard, and that was just an extremely ugly game, but there's still so much to... I don't know. I liked Nesmith coming out of the draft. I wasn't sure that the Celtics had the room to use him because of how many wings they have and the goals that they're trying to accomplish, and got very close to accomplishing a couple times while he's been there. And seeing what is one of the bigger pieces of the Brogdon trade maybe be kind of a diamond in the rough, like the Pacers tend to do, was encouraging, even if it was only for a very, very short amount of time.
Plan of just finding undervalued 2020 draftees is turning out to be a pretty smart team building plan so far for them. Next summer, when all those guys are up for extensions, that will not be as fun of a thing for them to deal with. But You know what? They'll have to see. Yeah, but that is something I should have thought about doing a show on, by the way, seeing all these rookie extensions and going, how much money is Tyrese Halliburton going to make next year? Because that's going to be a very big number.
Yeah.
Either way, yeah, if Nesmith is even a facsimile of that guy that was in Charlotte nightly, I mean, if he's putting it on the floor or defending like that every game, yeah, it's an everyday rotation player. At least this year, probably for more seasons because he's only 23. Yeah, his birthday was like 2 days ago. So that was obviously very impressive and a standout thing to me. I'll do another young guy that surprised me. We don't have to go as long on this one. Andrew Nembhard. I mean, obviously the clutch play against the Knicks at home is going to be the standout thing in everyone's mind because he was hitting shots at that time. He didn't shoot super well throughout preseason, but that dude can pass the effing ball. Like, he can be surrounded by defenders in the paint, and the guy he wants to give the ball to is on the other side of the paint. There's arms everywhere, and he just finds a way to get it to the guy, or he finds the right shooter. He had a beautiful cross-court pass to David Dastarvidas for a corner three in New York that I thought got glossed over because they were down by like 25 at that point. Like, he can pass the effing ball, and that sort of game reading ability makes me, maybe he never becomes a super awesome offensive player, but just like seeing what TJ McConnell can do with just passing basically as an offensive threat, like he's taller, 5 inches taller. He can be a better version of that if he grows how it looks like he's going to grow. I was really impressed with his read the game, be in the flow of the offense kind of abilities.
The size, it stood out quite a bit.
Yes.
Because there were a couple times when he was guarding Terry Rozier, and Terry Rozier's only like 6'6'1", but still you were like, holy crap, like that's a big dude. And everybody knows, it seems at this point, skilled size is absolutely the highest priority for me at every position, because you can put 3-6-5 guys out there, and as long as they're solid on both ends, you'll probably be okay. And so being able to have a guy like that, who the shooting was questionable, but because it's preseason and it was a bad thing, we'll just throw that out and we'll just keep all the good stuff. But
it's discouraging. I mean, he only had one good shooting game.
Right? Yeah. I mean, 4 games, 3 threes a game at 25%, not great.
Credit Will for pointing this out. His release is really low, or it starts really low.
Yes. Yeah. But you know what? 19 minutes a game, 5.5 assists, even in preseason. That's what we're going to focus on. That's it right there.
Yeah. Only good stuff here. Goga led the team in 3-point percentage. We don't care about the rest.
There it is. There's the Goga.
He's a shooter. Thank you again, everybody, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Were there any other non-DeAndre Hunter rookie extensions today? There was. Nasir Little. I just said that earlier in the show. Locked On Blazers with Mike Richmond is your way to go for your second listen. Hear more about that. Why the heck did Nasir Little put pen to paper on that contract? Hopefully Mike Richmond can explain it, because I don't get it. I understand the explanations of like, hey, here's some guaranteed money for a guy that doesn't play very much, but wow, that is surprising. Mike Richmond's got it for you. Speaking of preseason takeaways, I don't know why I said that. That's a terrible segue. But I want to talk about Myles Turner a little bit here. And this is a weak takeaway. This is mostly just a discussion of his play. I thought that, first of all, he played the 5 more, which is something he wanted. And I thought that the Rockets game was the first time he showed, and I don't think this is the right word, but this is the word I've been using for the last couple of days, creativity, right? He thought about before he caught the ball and when he caught the ball, he thought about all the things he could do, whether that's put it on the floor and take it to the basket, or hit a shot in the paint, or look inside. He thought about all those options and made some plays, whereas it felt like earlier in the preseason, he's being the fulcrum. He's clearly the most involved 5. He catches at the top of the key a lot. He's setting screens, swinging the ball around. But he wouldn't go through those reads as much. He would just swing it, which is fine. If you just run over and screen right after doing that, that's still keeping the offense flowing. I'm not saying that's a bad decision, but he's talented enough that I'm glad I saw that creativity from him, because since he's been asking for this role as the 5 so much, I want to see what he feels like he can do, especially against certain matchups. So especially against a guy like Şengün, who's much slower than him, to show off that creativity, I think was good. And he's kind of talked about, I'm going to write a story on what he kind of views playing full-time 5 as offensively, but seeing the evolution of how he kind of played on offense was interesting to me, in that on one hand, I didn't think he was asserting himself enough in the first 3 games in a way that I was like, oh man, I expected a little more from him. But on the other hand, in the 4th game, I was like, hey, this is kind of more of what I thought he'd be doing. So this isn't really a takeaway, more so that just I'm not sure what to expect from him as a 5-on offense still after seeing it for 4 games.
They were extremely deliberate early in just about every game in getting
They
him
were.
looks. It was very, very obvious, which, I mean, of course, like you get once Myles start going, that opens up a lot for everybody else. And so that's not really a surprise that happened. But your point about his creativity definitely shows through in the stats because he had 2.5 assists in 20 minutes a game. He's never had over 1.7 assists in a season playing about 30 minutes a game. So again,
Right. The high-low with Jalen Smith is a new
yes.
wrinkle for him. That was nice.
Yep, and that's one of those things that's a solid takeaway from a preseason game. It's like, okay, how is this different than Sabonis?
That's true.
Like, how is this different? Because we know that Myles isn't going to be Sabonis. They're different players. But to see Myles be able to do some stuff with the ball in a way that's not just automatic reads or second guessing, and there still was some second guessing because, of course, there was. That's just not how he plays basketball. I don't think it just doesn't come naturally to him like it did with Domas because they're drastically different players. But yeah, his shooting from the field was a little questionable for me. 94% from the line at 4.5 attempts was nice. Being more deliberate with that as well. But yeah, it was kind of nice to see just a couple wrinkles, like you said, with Jalen and Myles out there, even if Myles wasn't very assertive, which is kind of what he said he's going to do as the solo 5. So it's interesting to see. I'm excited to read what you have to say about that.
He missed a bajillion threes. I have little concern about that. I think we just kind of know he's going to be 33% from 3 this year. They were all good looks. I don't think he was forcing it from 3. But yeah, and I think some of it too was like, he's never played with Halliburton. He's never played with Yield. Like he himself is like, okay, let's figure out what the right tendencies for these guys are. Never played with Jalen, but at the same time, yeah, like assertive is a good word for it too. Like combining assertiveness and creativity. There has to be a word for this that's better than what I'm saying, but somewhere he's got to find the right balance because the defense didn't miss a beat. Like still 2 blocks a game in under 20 minutes. Still masterful at opening his hips at the perfect angle to make guards think they have an open layup and then just throwing it into the third row. So I have no concerns about him being important defensively still. But on offense, I just thought his role might look a little different, and we'll see how it evolves because in that 4th game, it clearly was like, oh, wow, okay. I think that was the first game he hit a 3. Like he just looked better. But what will he settle into? And confidence has played a big role throughout his whole career. Can he go in confident and be a kind of more forceful offensive player? Scored 40 points against the Wizards last year in their 2nd game. So we'll see if they open against the Wizards. He can do something similar. Give me one more preseason thing from you. I only have one more on my list. So if you have a couple, we can go through more than one. But
I think Ajax's fouling is still something that I'm not concerned about, but it's just something I'm watching because 2.5 fouls in 14 minutes a game, it's just a lot. And it seemed like a lot of the fouls were very early in the game and very silly and kind of cut into his playing time, which if we still have Myles on the roster, we have plenty of bigs. So it's not like a huge deal as far as getting talent on the floor, but he's a player that we want to see more of. And if he can't stay out of foul trouble, it's going to be very hard to count on him moving forward, even if he is young and it is preseason.
A lot of guys had foul trouble issues, ironically. Ajax is the most noteworthy because it was a problem for him last year too, but like even Turner, Kendall Brown, Chris Duarte were all guys who I was like, that was a weird foul for them to get in that situation for. So yeah, I think fouling will be something that, and here's my take on the fouls. For the big men, for Jackson and Turner, yeah, it can be problematic because of the way they defend around the basket. Like they both averaged over 2 blocks a game. Like they're going to foul some, but their fouls are a little different than guys in the perimeter. But I think they're going to both end up in foul trouble quite a bit this year just because the Pacers defense isn't going to be very good. So they're going to do a lot of bailing out, be around the ball a lot, which will naturally lead to a lot of fouls. And for Jackson, that's one of his big points of growth. And you sort of saw it. The blocks were there more. The block to foul ratio, which is a made up good term. Like it's just a turnover ratio. Who cares? It's a made up thing I just made up right now. Was probably higher than it was last season. I don't have the numbers in front of me. So that's encouraging. Like he's getting better at timing the jumps and all that stuff. But yeah, the fouls are too many for him. And I think he knows that's his biggest weakness because he was good at other stuff. Like his offensive flow is better. He can catch any pass. He'd probably be the best wide receiver on the Colts right now. but but yeah, there are still some foul concerns. Like he barely played against Houston. I remember looking up in the third quarter, he played like 2 minutes. I was stunned, but that's why.
Yeah, Ajax last season 1.4 blocks and 2.6 fouls in 15 minutes a
Hey,
game. And
definitely up the made up golden ratio that I had
yeah, in
created.
preseason it was 2.5 blocks to 2.3 fouls in
All
15 minutes
right,
a
a
game. So
positive, a
we
positive
are
there.
getting there. Yeah, foul to block ratio is I expect to see that as a
Dang, I actually
staple
want to
moving
make like a
forward.
chart of that and see where good defenders or that I think are good defenders end up.
Yeah,
Like, I doubt it's actually a thing, but I'd be curious.
almost certainly not, but I'm sure somebody's going to put it together anyways.
I got time. I'm just kidding. I did not have any time. Yeah, I thought his preseason was mostly encouraging, but I agree that the fouls were still a little bit of a concern. And no like noteworthy new additions where like I felt like he was like, he dribbled twice in a row or like was hitting threes or something. But he got better at the stuff he was already good at, which is still good. Speaking of guys who got better at stuff they're already good at, Jalen Smith had an interesting preseason. I'd like to talk about him for a second. Might be the team's best rebounder this year, which is good for him and very not good for the Pacers as a team that he might be their best rebounder. I don't know what to make of his preseason. He kind of toggled between looking good and not looking so good. The three was fine. He finished plays okay. He had a good nose for the ball. His defense improved on Julius Randle from game to game. I think he did a lot of noteworthy stuff and growth over the preseason, but didn't quite look like the guy that finished the season last year for the Pacers. Not that he looked bad. I think he looked fine on the floor and was really good on the glass. Again, their best rebounder. But similar to Turner, where I couldn't come away with a takeaway because he kind of had some performances where his force was obvious and somewhere it wasn't. I kind of had the same feeling with Smith, where in New York, I was just, he was just kind of there. In Houston, I didn't feel his impact as much. Whereas Charlotte and New York, the second time, he looked pretty solid. Look, they won both those games. But I just don't know what to make of what his preseason was, which is not really a takeaway. It's just again, same with Turner. Where I just want to discuss him more, but he just has an interesting season ahead to me. Where will he be like this all year, where it's really inconsistent or matchup dependent, or can he kind of figure out what he did well against Julius Randle, or how he was able to be nosier and around the ball more in those games where they had success?
Yeah, that's another thing that I want to go back and look at is see who Jalen Smith was playing with, right? Because we know he's the starting power forward. We know he's playing with Myles, but how often was he at the five and what did that
Right.
production look like? But I think the thing for me is you've talked about it a lot is Jalen Smith kind of had two different seasons as a Pacer last year to close out the season. And the preseason definitely looked more like the second half where he wasn't a 40% three-point shooter that was
Still a better
everywhere.
player than he was in Phoenix,
Oh, absolutely.
but
Well, he got to play, so you kind of get to see that he can actually be a player rather than not. But yeah, so I think that, again, very small sample size, so it can go either way. But the fact that it wasn't like overwhelming is interesting to me. But I think the fact that he was playing as the four should not be taken lightly, I think.
I agree. I agree with that. And it'll be a change for him, right? He played the four at Maryland, but not in the NBA at all, and it's just an adjustment completely, especially on a new team. And maybe he'll play the five if certain highly rumored trade ends up happening. The last thing I want to note really quickly before I go back to you, because I'm going twice in a row now, I think they're going to switch on defense more this year than they have since I ever covered the team. One, because it's just easier to teach a bunch of young guys, like, hey, just switch everything. And two, like we talked about with Nembhard being large and Terry Taylor, their backup four, being small, they have a lot of dudes who are about the same size. So it's very easy to switch and have a similar sized guy guarding whoever had the ball. That's it. Do you have any other preseason stuff you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I don't really want to talk about what was supposed to be defense in preseason, but that's definitely something that will be worth monitoring, especially if the aforementioned rumored trade takes place. I just imagine that's going to be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I talked about that on my through two games takeaways with Alex Golden, but
Yep.
they went 2-2, but and they only gave up 100 points the second time. But I am pretty concerned. I am pretty concerned about
Yeah.
what their defense looks like. It can be like the starting five, which has Turner in it and has Duarte in it, got smoked by Houston. And TJ McConnell was in that lineup too. Like, that's in theory three of your best defenders. They got smoked by Houston. I mean,
Did Houston miss a three though?
no, 14-24 at halftime was ridiculous. Like that. that obviously is way higher. But the 81 points even
Yeah.
with is just insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely have some concerns about the Pacers defense this year. So someone's gonna have to step up on that end of the floor because yes, the Pacers will be fun to watch this year, but they'll also have a lot of like 125 to 130 games, I think.
Oh man. Yeah, that's if the trade happens, I think the 30th ranked defense
It's
is
possible.
is probably more likely than not. Yeah.
They just lost to the team that I would have said is the other team in the mix for the 30th ranked defense, ironically.
Yeah, oh man, those games are going to be 140 to 143, something like that. Chris Duarte hits a 3 at the buzzer to win it.
Yeah, preseason is fun because we learn all these things and get to see players in new roles. And then on Wednesday, we forget about them because the regular season starts. Pacers, Wizards tomorrow night. If you're listening to this, comes out, or maybe it already happened, or maybe it's tonight. Who knows? Either way, there's a lot to talk about with that. So Derek Kramer, aka iPacers Blog, will be joining me to talk regular season Wizards, all the fun stuff on tomorrow's show. Looking forward to that. And of course, Thursday's show, the big classic overreaction to the Pacers' first game show. Can't wait. Lots of fun coming for you on Locked On Pacers this week, but you can't leave until you hear more about Rhett. Rhett, where can people find you and all the brilliant thoughts about the Pacers you have put out there?
Oh, I don't know about all of that, but you can find me on Twitter at Rhett_Bauer, doing some fantasy stuff, doing some Pacers stuff, just trying to put as much basketball out there because it's an exciting time of year for basketball as we actually get games that matter.
I'm trash at fantasy basketball, so I very much rely on Rhett and Josh Lloyd to carry me across the world of fantasy sports. Highly recommend following Rhett if you are in the Pacers sphere of fandom and on the internet. And if you're listening to this, you likely are both of those things. Again, back tomorrow talking Pacers season preview. It's finally here. Thank you all for riding with me throughout the offseason, and we'll see you tomorrow.